Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to another PalaView Market Research video. Today, I'm going to be providing a history lesson, okay? This is history in the context of business and really just the state of the world today that I'm shocked more people don't know about. So, if you stick around to the end of this video, you will probably have a better understanding of how oil became the primary commodity that fuels our planet, government contracts that were used to create the infrastructure for moving that oil around. And you'll actually, by happenstance, understand how Israel was created along the way. Now, I am shocked by how few people understand or even aware of this image. So, this image is so important because it represents all the things I just talked about, right? In this moment, this is Franklin Delano Roosevelt meeting with the King of Saudi Arabia 2 weeks after the horrors of Auschwitz were uncovered by the Soviet Union. Okay. So, this is to provide context, this is right at the end of World War II. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt had a responsibility as a president of the United States. He understood that in this post World War II world, the United States is leaving that war with this tremendous reputation. And its reputation is one of that really being the ultimate global superpower, right? And having this reputation for being able to mobilize these large industrial infrastructure level construction projects, essentially, right? Across the world. Now, in order to maximize and to take advantage of that reputation, we did things like I think a lot of you are familiar with, right? We lent money to Europe and to Germany and to Japan to rebuild their societies. But it was a lot more complicated than that and a lot more widespread. And in order to really take advantage of this moment, the United States had to have oil security. And the only way to have oil security at this time was through Saudi Arabia. Now, 15 years before this meeting was taking place, Texaco and Chevron surveyed eastern Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf and uncovered that there was essentially an infinite supply of oil in Saudi Arabia. And so it was an inevitable progression that we were going to tap into this, right? Now, there were two other extremely important things happening at this time. One, Roosevelt was trying to convince King Abdul to gift Gaza to the people, to the Jewish people, right? Because of the horrors that were happening during World War II. The King of Saudi Arabia at that time rejected it straight out and was basically saying to Roosevelt that, hey, you should give them a piece of Germany. That would make a lot more sense. You disrupting Gaza by removing the Palestinians is going to create years of trouble. Okay. Now, the other thing that was happening behind the scenes is Franklin Delano Roosevelt was going behind Winston Churchill's back in the United Kingdom because Roosevelt promised Churchill that he wasn't going to seek out and profit from territories of Great Britain. And Saudi Arabia at that time, parts of it were still considered a territory of Great Britain. Now, in order for this to essentially profit off of this moment, they agreed. They didn't agree about Gaza, right? But they did agree that they would build a pipeline connecting Saudi Arabia, as you see here, to the Mediterranean. And that is what we call the Trans-Arabian Pipeline System. It's not active anymore today, but at the time, you will see here that it connected the large, oil reserves of Saudi Arabia in the eastern part of the country all the way to the Mediterranean Sea so that we could get it out to Europe, we can get it out to America, right? And you'll notice that it is connected through Lebanon and very close to what became Israel, right? Like just tens of miles away. Now, what happened was this company, Bechtel Corporation, was given the contract by the Saudi government to build this, okay? And in exchange for that contract to this company, the US military had to pledge protection of the Saudi oil rigs from all of their violent neighbors in this area in Jordan and Iraq and Syria, Lebanon, and of course, Israel, Palestine. So this trend continued where the the powers that be in the Middle East continued to give contracts for developing big areas of the Middle East, right? To specifically American companies. So another one of these, constructors, one of these construction companies was Morrison Knudsen. Okay, and this is Harry Morrison. He was a really one heck of a guy. Okay, so this company throughout the World War II was building bases across the Pacific. So they were mobilized everywhere and proved to have a phenomenal reputation. But they went out and they built something called the Dala Dam, which is in Kandahar, Afghanistan. And this dam has quite the interesting history, guys. Essentially, they built this dam, but it quickly became riddled with problems, and they were unable to deliver what the people of Kandahar needed. And Kandahar, if you don't know, is like the second largest city in Afghanistan, and it was already one of the few areas where there was like actually decent agricultural production. And so they built the dam to increase the agricultural production and yield of that region. However, the water that dam sought to contain had risen so much that a large area of Kandahar became waterlogged. Okay. And this was caused by like this impermeable rock layer that prevented proper drainage. And that led to large amounts of salt to rise into the surface and to change the chemistry of the soil in that region. So the salts infected the topsoils and it forced these farmers to adapt to new crops. And what were those crops? The crops that yielded the best? It was opium. It was poppies, these poppy seeds, right? And so there were a lot of Wahhabists, so extreme Muslims, which weren't really much of a thing. There was very, very small groups, okay? And they lived in this region, and they quickly found out that you could, grow a lot of poppy, a lot of heroin. And so they did. And this region, guys, continues to this day to be one of the largest income sources for groups like ISIS, Taliban, all of these things, right? And we have quite a controversial history of controlling and not controlling, losing control, and profiting off of this region via the American military. Now, if we go back to the beginning here, why am I making this video? Well, I want you guys to understand the nature of business and big business, because big business is always in partnership with the government. Okay. And the government's interests are always really has to do with self-preservation, right? And there are a lot of things going on with behind the scenes for Roosevelt at that time. His cabinet consisted of a lot of people who were Jewish, right? And so they were pressuring him behind the scenes to essentially reclaim Israel in Gaza for the Jewish people who were absolutely going through this terrible tragedy at the time. And, King Abdul at that time also had the foresight to understand that this would lead to hundreds of years of conflict if Roosevelt did that. But behind every choice, right? Even something as good as and simple as gifting a region and reclaiming a region for another group of people, there's a story like this one where ultimately we used the occupation of Israel or of Gaza to gift it to the Jewish people to move oil around and to provide contracts for American companies. Okay, so that's today's video, guys, and we will pick this up again tomorrow. See you.